Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Online Tennis Podcast. We are joined by a very special guest of mine to talk about the Australian Open qualifying. The only man I implicitly trust to talk us through qualifying as much as possible. Damian Kust on maybe like 1 hour's sleep. I don't know. How are you feeling?
Yeah, more like two. I actually slept through the last match, Jarry against Nava, a little bit. These past 4 days have been a challenge.
Well, we're all getting used to it. This is the first day of little sleep and 2 more weeks to follow, Damien. I would love, Damien, if you could. We're talking about men's qualifying today, by the way. I would love if you could tell us three or four of the sort of biggest stories from qualifying. What stood out for you? Where would you like to start, basically?
I think in general, what stood out, and this is pretty weird because it's not gonna be like any particular player, but the unpredictability of it. We've me and a lot of other people on Twitter have been doing like every single slam qualifying. We've been doing like predictions of who will make it, and I've never seen scores like it in this one. And some of these outcomes, there were sections where everyone was just straight up certain that, I don't know. Section 11 or section 12, they seemed very soft, that Nardi and Striker would be like almost certain to get in, and then Nardi loses in the opening round. Stricker lost today. But there's just so many names that no one would have picked to make it. Basically, some guys who on quick hard courts theoretically shouldn't do well, like Svchina or Krutik. So it's really getting so unpredictable, and in that way
Hmm.
possibly very exciting too. But I think it also made for like the storylines coming out of the qualifying maybe aren't as strong usually. What has to be mentioned, of course, is Juncheng Shang, so the 17-year-old former junior world number one, who was playing his first Grand Slam qualifying here and already qualified.
Yeah.
It seems like during the off season he just made a huge jump, especially when it comes to the serve. Because compared to, of course, when we see Asians with quite, where the physicality isn't that strong, we're always thinking that maybe there's going to be like a power issue. Like he's always had the ability to just, unleash onto a ball. And yeah, it just seems like he's made such an insane jump. And of course, at 17 years of age, in the men's game especially, I think for Shank to make his maiden Grand Slam main draw, in his maiden Grand Slam
Yeah.
qualifying at 17 is absolutely huge.
People at home won't be aware he beat Verdasco in the second round, of course. Do you fancy his chances at all against Oscar Otta in the main draw, or?
Um, I think it's possible. What definitely comes to mind instantly is the match that Otta had in round one last year against Sang, because again, that's yeah, you sort of just think of all these Asian youngsters who do great and then don't really transition to the tour. I think Shang already has a better chance of doing that than Sang, who at the ATP level has struggled, and that Otta match was one of the examples. I think it's still probably going to be very tough, but it's not like beyond possibility. And I'm glad you mentioned the rivals that he played. Three opponents of even quality guys he hasn't really even had the chance to play before. That was a really nice display of strength from still a youngster and like a complete youngster. And also I another story that I sort of can link together a couple of qualifiers here are Brandon Holt and Enzo Couacaud to me, because it just seems like in regular tour events, like there's this meme with the huge dog and a small dog,
Yeah, yeah.
where yeah, I'm sure you know what I
I
mean.
know the
Yeah,
one you mean. Yeah, yeah.
and they're a bit like the big dog is Holt and Quaco in Grand Slam qualifying or in Grand Slams in general, and the small dog is them in regular tour events. This is
Hmm.
sort of true for Quaco. I think it's very very like correct with Holt though.
Yeah.
Holt is now 6-0 in Grand Slam qualifying, and on the Challenger Tour he's made two quarterfinals. Generally doesn't
Right.
contend for titles whatsoever, and yet he does this. Yet he beats Taylor Fritz at the U.S. Open, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Brandon Holt's introduction, I guess he is the son of Tracy Austin. Is that right?
Yeah, Kouakou is now 9-0 in his last three qualifying attempts, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, compared to Holt, he's still been
Yeah.
doing much more at the challenger level. He's won a challenger in the past, in 2021, I think. But since he has this streak, He's had a couple of semis, he's had many quarterfinals, but
Yeah.
it's not like he's a title contender most of the time. It's not like last year he like made a final or something, and yet somehow he's 9-0 in these Grand Slam qualifyings. And also even in the main draw, you probably remember at the US Open he played Borna Coric in the opening round, and he led like 5-3 in the deciding set or something like that. For some reason at Grand Slams they're just completely different players, and that's probably one of the storylines here as well.
And Couacaud, is that how you pronounce his name? It's tough. Um, he beat Stricker, of course, in the final round, right? What was that like?
Um, it's one of these little moments where we sort of feel like Stricker should be doing, this is the breakthrough, and he doesn't come through. It's happened a lot of times before. I think Kwakwa is a pretty tough matchup for him as well. He's got I would say maybe not a huge serve, but one that is quite underrated. And a lot of the time, we don't really think of him as a big server, but it really shows in matchups like that he can, you know, he can sort of keep keep Streaker still in trouble if he can just hold serve and get to the tie breaks. He did. It's a little disappointing that Stricker again didn't step up to the challenge, didn't get that Grand Slam main draw, but it's not something that we haven't seen before. And yeah, taking into consideration that Coco is now 9-0, it's pretty wild.
Damien, I'd like to talk a little bit about Struff because, well, on paper he had the easiest route through. I think he didn't drop a set. He had a few pretty comfortable matches in terms of scoreline. Yeah, he's against Tommy Paul in the first round. I always thought that was a winnable match, and then Davidovich for Kenan Bublik as well in the second round. How's he looking?
Yeah, it's not unwinnable. I agree. I checked this last night. I had no idea, but this is actually Struff's, like, historically when it comes to main draw results. This is his weakest sum, and he's only won one match in 8 attempts.
What?
Which is kind of surprising, yeah.
Mega
I mean,
surprising. Okay.
yeah, 11%. I think that's an 11% win rate. At all other slams, he has like over 30 at least. So Struff has been losing to Van de Zandschulp, O'Connell, that's not great. Djokovic,
Yeah.
well, Ebden,
Yeah.
that's also a surprising loss. Federer, of course, that's the one where he made the second round. Uh, Sela as well, Yuzhny,
Yeah.
and I think yeah,
That's
team as
bad
well.
losses, I
So
would
a,
say.
a couple of opponents where he couldn't really do much, but yeah, there were a few mishaps along the way. Yeah, I think he can beat Tommy Paul. He's not the favorite to do that for sure, not. But
Mhm.
he was in good form before the before the Australian Open qualifying already. He had a semi-final in Canberra where he only lost to Leandro Riedi. I thought he played very well that week, and he was actually one of these guys who seemed like the favorite of their qualifying section and made it, which was probably just him and Watanuki, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was one of the guys who really seemed like the favorite. I thought maybe Liam Brody in the second round could give him a tough challenge, but Brody lost that tight match to Gomez, and yeah, Struff didn't drop more than 4 games per set.
Yeah.
As it ended up, maybe not the toughest set of opponents, but the way, how comfortable he was. Yeah, I think he's one of the better qualifiers, but maybe the draw is just okay.
You mentioned Watanuki. Did you mention he was a bit of a favourite for you? Is that what you were saying, or?
Yeah, basically at the end of 2022, he won a couple of Japanese challengers back to back, which is a bit of a story of his career that he was doing extremely well in Japanese challengers, Kobe especially, which he won like 3 times by now, I think, or maybe won it twice and finished runner up once,
Right.
and then didn't do much in bigger events.
Mm-hmm.
He also had one final in Columbus in the States. That's also at the courts of the Ohio State, and it's like super fast as well.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely loves it when it's fast. He plays very quick off the bounce, returns very aggressively. And yeah, the story of his career was that he was basically peaking for the Japanese challengers, where the field wasn't great, of course,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, and then not really being able to repeat it against better opponents. And well, I was hoping that he would finally do that because, well, just if you look at him just from a ball striking perspective, he really has a lot of talent. And yeah, it looks like right now he's doing that. Although it has to be said that he was very fortunate to get through, because he played Kukushkin in the second round, which was always going to be like the problem round for him, because it was going to be either Kukushkin or Duckworth.
Hmm.
Both quite tough, and I think both would approach the matchup with Watanuki kind of similarly. Of course, Kukushkin is even tougher with these flat balls. But well, he was 4-6, 2-5 down, and Kukushkin had a
Oh,
couple of match points on his own serve.
oh man,
Otherwise, of course, he was fine, and probably should be like, he is one of the most dangerous qualifiers. Who is he playing?
winter connection.
Yeah, exactly. A winnable matchup, but it's not easy, right? But it's definitely in his range right now. He's playing with a lot of confidence, of course. 16-1 in his last 17 matches.
Yeah. Um, Anything you can tell us about sort of fan favourite Nicolas Jarry coming through the draw? I'm sure people will be interested in him.
Is he a fan favorite, really? I mean,
He's a favourite of mine, Damien. Actually, I'm not speaking for
okay.
the tennis Twitter elite, but
Well,
I think
you
that people
know,
like him.
most people probably think of him as a serve bot, I suppose,
That's true. Yeah.
which isn't that incorrect.
Yeah.
I generally don't like the term, but his ground game can be wildly off at times.
Mm,
When it's good, it's good, but when it's not, it can be absolutely awful.
mm,
Yeah, the qualifying, he was down 5-7 2-4 to Virtanen in the opening round, and
mm.
well, Virtanen got injured,
Oh,
uh, like his back or something like that, and yeah, had an MTO. It still went to a deciding set tiebreaker,
yeah.
and there
I
were
mean,
definitely moments when. Hmm?
I was gonna say, is Vertanen not a bit of a serve bot himself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
this match just looked on paper like a total 50-50, and
Yeah.
it kind of was. I mean, it ended in a deciding set tiebreaker, right?
Mm,
It's what we expected. And yeah, I think Jarry then had a pretty quiet road, beat Skatov, and today he beat Nava.
hmm.
He's playing Kecmanovic. That's a rough one for him for sure, but kind of similarly to Struff and Watanuki, I think he has you know, Jarry always has a chance if the serve is clicking, and the serve is always clicking, right? So,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
So other players that stood out for me, Damien, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Hmm.
A few players that came through in straight sets as well. Max Purcell and Hsiou Hsu. Is that right? Hsiou Hsu. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I wish I knew. I mean,
It's the first time I've seen his
uh,
name. I'd never seen him before, so I thought you could tell me about him and Alexander Vukic as well, who came through in straight sets.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, Hsu, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, of course. Yeah, he was a fantastic junior back in the day in world number 5. He won 3 boys doubles slams in a year. Anyway, yeah, Hsu has had a couple of phenomenal months recently, which was came a little out of nowhere. He's also been one of these guys, had a great junior career. Asian, maybe not. It's not that his physicality is very weak, but we've had so many of these players who struggle with the transition from that part of the world. But he won his maiden challenger in November in Australia, which was not a good event. That couple of I think it was Sydney and Playford, they were definitely like one of the weakest on the tour. No one wanted to go to Australia in October, November, and it showed in the fields. But he still beat like Mark Polmans in the final, I think. So it was it wasn't that bad. And yeah, he just seems to be playing with so much confidence right now that it's taking him through. And he won 4 tiebreaks along the way, never lost a set. Showed some insane tenacity as well, because he, against Fairness, I think Fairness served for the set. Miller served for the set twice in the opening set of the third round. I don't think he's particularly dangerous in the main draw. Against the minor, his chances are very slim.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Vukic, and who else?
Purcell and Vukic. Yeah.
Ah, Purcell, of course, is more famous for his doubles
Yeah.
results. So the Wimbledon title, the 2 Australian Open finals, including last year. But he's a damn good singles player as well. I think a lot of that, of course, comes from his doubles repertoire, because the serve is huge. The hands at the net are amazing.
Yeah.
But also he has that slice. He even had like there was a moment in his singles career where he had such issues. I think it was confidence with his forehand that he was basically slicing most of them.
Really? Right.
Which yeah, it was about the summer 2020, summer of 2021, I think, around the summer that year.
Hmm.
And yeah, that was very weird to see, but it works better right now when he can use it as a, as a distraction tool, and he uses that plenty. And I think for a lot of players it's kind of confusing. A very strong run, definitely. Arnaldi, even for how little experience he has on hard courts, is a great win in the final qualies round. And I think Purcell also has like a maybe winnable round opponent,
Rusevori,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not impossible again, but whether he's the favorite to do that, I mean, I think we've sort of established by now that there are a lot of matches for the qualifiers like that where they are sort of the sort of like can do it.
Yeah.
They're not the favorites, but
Purcell's
we'll
a bit
see.
different. It's just a spanner in the works for any ATP player, really, isn't it? It's just a different style of play
Mm,
to
I mean,
contend with. So
there's a couple where the qualifiers are favorites as well, but I guess we're gonna talk about it in a second. But
yeah,
you also mentioned the Vukic, right?
Vukic first though. Yeah, Vukic first.
Yeah, I think he had one of the strongest qualities campaigns. Definitely, the round one matchup against Diallo was one of the ones that stood out instantly when we saw the draw. He cleared that up very easily, and yeah, today he was also excellent against Mo, an opponent that really tests his rally tolerance, can try to expose the backhand liabilities that Vukic probably has, but yeah, he just had none of that. And
Mhm.
yeah, he's clearly in very good shape right now, which is good to see because, well, he was skipped when it comes to the major wildcards. He had a major wildcard last year. He beat Lloyd Harris in the opening round, and then lost to Albot, I think. And this year, they didn't have one for him. I think it was kind of tough to fit him in. Probably the guys he was like battling against were Hijikata and Milman. That Vukic could have gotten the wildcard instead of them. Milman, of course, got it because of his achievements, and Rinky is much younger, so I guess it also makes sense. I understand why he didn't get it. Like, it's not. I don't think it's an outrageous decision, but if he wanted to make this Qualies campaign a statement, then he surely did.
Cool. Yeah.
What they probably weren't happy about was that, well, at least ranking wise, he didn't make much progress between this year and last year. But
Yeah.
in the summer, he was basically injured for like 3 or 4 months. He won like barely any points between March and September. So that was
Mhm.
mostly it. Whenever he's played, he was still playing at like a almost top 100 level when he got back into good shape.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very glad to see that Qualies campaign. And as far as I remember, he plays Brandon Holt in the opening round, which is a fantastic draw for him, and honestly
Yeah.
something he should totally capitalize on.
Well, what I'm gonna do now, Damien, you'll have a chance to pick your winner from that one. I'm gonna run through every match that involves a qualifier or a
Okay.
wild card. I want a
Mm-hmm.
quick winner prediction. Munar Sferchina.
Yeah,
That's
China
a
is
tough
fine. Yeah,
one.
yeah. No, not going for him today. Here, although I have to say that today he made one of the biggest upsets of the qualifying, beating Riedi, and
Yes, yeah, it was
giving him
swift.
just 4 games, which was insane. And the way he
Cool.
was defending, like he was just everywhere on the court. And yeah, I'm just not picking him against Munar because, well, Munar's just too solid, probably.
Yeah, fair enough. Kubler Baez, it's got to be Kubler, right?
That's not wild cards as well. Okay,
Yeah, white cards as well.
I didn't realize. That isn't like Kubler gonna be like a favorite in that, probably,
Yeah,
or
I'd say
maybe like even something like that, right? I mean, Baez
yeah,
has won
maybe
like
even. Baez isn't such a
Baez
bad
has
streak
won,
though.
I think, one of his last 17 matches or something like that, and
Yeah,
also one of his last something like that on hard courts as well.
yeah,
I don't think it's quite as bad as as it seems to be. He had that big win over Sonego in Naples in October, but still Kubler seems to have started the year very well as well. I think it could be Kubler.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe even the favorite there for me.
Okay. Otto Shang,
I would still go Ota, but I expect it to be pretty close.
cool. Escobedo Daniel.
Ernesto Escobedo. I, it's pretty weird because last year, before the Australian Open, Escobedo won a challenger in Bendigo, and everyone was like fully expecting him to qualify. He eventually made it as a lucky loser, and this year, no one had like virtually any expectations for him. He had a terrible second half of 2022, and he lost to Blake Ellis in Canberra just before the Australian Open. Uh, and yeah, he drew Luca Nardi in the opening round. And as I said earlier, I think at the beginning, that seemed like a super soft section and a very easy way for Nardi to advance. And I don't even think that Escobedo played well against Nardi. It was mostly the youngster that just was completely wild. He didn't try to use his strengths, expose Escobedo's movement at all. He was just really overhitting everything. But by the time we reached the third round, especially today against Kotov, I think we saw a lot of the Escobedo of the past. Of course, he was a top 100 player back in the day. If we see that sort of Escobedo again, where he's, like in the old days, where he has this fantastic footwork to his forehand, even falling backwards, he generates so much power on the forehand. I think it's very possible that he can beat Taro Daniel, who doesn't seem to be, Daniel was of course also one of the best performers of Australia 2022, right? He made the third round, beat Murray, but as he's probably not in that sort of form at the moment, I think Escobedo has a very, very good chance in this one.
Okay. Watanuki Rinderknech.
Would probably stick with Rinderknech, but yeah, I
Fifth,
just,
you're
as I
sounding
said
a bit
earlier,
60-40 maybe, Damien?
that's probably a little too close, I think. But
Right.
yeah, Watanuki is playing with so much confidence and has that sort of upside where if he plays well, he can beat like almost anyone. So
Yeah.
yeah, wouldn't be shocked there for sure.
Okay. Millman Husler.
Uh,
I'll call Husler there, I think.
I still don't really buy Marc-Andrea Hussler as a consistent player. I don't think he'll ever be that, of course, with that hyper aggressive style, returning everything like it has to be killed. But you know, uh, Milman has been off. He's definitely declined physically, so I would echo that sentiment. But yeah, whenever I see Marc Andrea Hisler and he's the favorite in the match, I know it could be in trouble,
Yeah.
basically.
Fair enough. Okay, you're on the fence there, I think. Hanfman Hijikata.
I mean, Hanfman probably should be the favorite. He also had a pretty good qualies campaign, as much as Rinky. He's a fun player. He can play with the crowd as well, which could be important here. But
Mm-hmm.
I think he doesn't really belong at the ATP Tour level yet.
Cool. Fair
And
enough.
yeah, Hanfman's probably the favorite.
Yep. Greek Spirkotov.
Because of the thing is that I think he's nowhere near his 2022 form, especially when he qualified for the US Open in the French. I think he's nowhere near that form, but maybe ironically, this is where he gets his second Grand Slam win. Of course, Griekspoor is coming of the Pune title, but it can kind of go both ways. Give you confidence and also for so many players, a big success is then succeeded by something terrible. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I wouldn't be shocked again, even though I think Kotov is not really close to that sort of form from the French or from the US last year.
Okay, fair enough. Nori Van Ash.
Nah, there's probably no chance. Yeah, no chance whatsoever. I mean, Nori is just such a terrible matchup for I think any somewhat underpowered
Yeah,
youngsters, right?
yeah,
He
yeah.
just
I
kills
hear you.
them, and yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. Eubanks Kwon.
I think Eubanks is probably the most complete player he's been ever. Probably gonna be in the top 100 sometime soon. So it should be pretty close for me. I think in general it's a pretty decent matchup for Kwon. I think Eubanks is gonna struggle with all these. Kwon also plays a pretty flat ball. He's gonna, Eubanks is gonna have to bend the knees, so that's not something he likes. But yeah, all in all, I think it's pretty close.
Okay. Yibing Wu versus Muti.
They played in the final round of the qualifying for the US Open, and Wu won. But then they both made runs in the major, right? Because
Yeah.
Mutei went to the fourth round, lost to Rude, and as a lucky loser, and Wu lost to Medvedev in the third round.
Hmm.
That's one I really want to watch, and I'm not sure if I'm comfortable picking the favorite. Although I would like to believe that Ibing Wu is, is the guy with the higher peak.
Bottom half of the draw, Damian Rublev team.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think Rublev is probably too strong.
Purcell Rusevori, we did touch on it. What was your pick though?
Gonna stick with Emil, but it wouldn't be shocking, especially if I'm not sure how he's gonna handle that slice. And in general, Purcell is a pretty good disruptor with a big serve, which is it's hard to play against guys like that.
Yeah. Bellucci, Bonzi, and not Thomas Bellucci, by the way. What's Bellucci's first name?
Mattia, he's like the next generation's Mute with a big serve. Well, big
Okay.
serve maybe could be misleading because he's under 180 meters tall, but for his height, he's got an amazing lefty serve. The angles he produces, he on a quick court, he's winning a lot of first serve points
Mm-hmm.
just based on that. And in general, he has some insane variety, hand skills. He just has 100 different game plans, and it's super hard to play against him. I'm not sure. Like there is a bit of a concern that at the ATP level, he needs time to produce this game, right? If he's gonna be overpowered, if he's gonna be on the defense constantly, even if he's a pretty decent defender, then he can't employ that creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a bit of a concern at the ATP level. I think we haven't seen him there yet, so it's kind of hard to tell. But Bonzi, is he that sort of opponent who would just run him over? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. I think he's gonna be a fun favorite for a lot of people because he's just aesthetically pleasing to a full
Mm-hmm.
possible to the fullest possible extent, and yeah.
So the last thing the tour needs is another terrifying Italian to defeat everybody, I gotta say. But yeah, good news. Next one, Jan-Lennard Struff.
Yeah, as said earlier, I don't think this has any upset alert on it, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
a great story for Sue, and yeah.
yeah, fair enough. Berg
Now that's a match that we should be expecting the qualifier to win, right?
Yeah,
I suppose.
Jera played well this week.
I mean, yeah, Jera is better on hard courts than it seems for probably, but I think looking at the set of qualifiers, Bergs has to be mentioned as one of the better ones as well.
Yeah.
He was absolutely woeful at the United Cup. Of course, won two games against Kuzmanov
Yeah.
and then lost to Stefanos Sakellarides. But apparently, after arriving in Australia, he got ill. He had like a flu or something, and it wasn't until like January 6th, 7th, where he was felt fully fit, ready to play. I think he was really given a huge helping hand with the draw because he got Jeremy Jin, the 18-year-old wildcard in the opening round in qualies,
Uh-huh.
and he sort of managed to play himself into form, play himself back into good shape. I think he's got every chance of winning this one, and I'm especially excited to, for him to potentially win against Jere because, well, the second round is so winnable as well.
Dimitrov Karatsev in the second round and yeah, Djokovic in the
Yeah,
third, unfortunately.
it's super winnable. It's doable for him to get to the third round here. Of course, it's not set in stone. Of course, it's not a given. But I might actually like his chances more than any of these four guys: Dimitrov, Karatsev, Jere.
Cool.
Maybe that's a bit of a stretch with Dimitrov, but yeah,
Yeah, I'll fly through the other ones. We've got Couacaud, Delian as well. Doesn't matter because they're playing
yeah.
Djokovic.
Delian is coming back after what? How long was it? Like a 6 month break or something like that. So it has to be Quaco, and Delian is not that good on hard courts, of course. Anyway,
Yeah. Seng Poprin. Poprin, right?
should be Popperin. Yeah, too good. The form is great in the first weeks of the year, and as I said, I mean earlier, Tseng is just not at ATP Tour ready yet. So
Yeah. Jarry Kecmanovic. I think we picked Kecmanovic there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Schwartzman Krutik. Obviously, Schwartzman's vulnerable, right? But
What a fun matchup, Jesus! I mean, sometimes you just see these. You see a couple of players, and you're like, they weren't even like in the same universe before, right? Schwartzman and Krutik. They just seemed like they could never meet each other. Honestly, Diego Schwartzman is in such poor form that I wouldn't even put it
Yeah,
past him, realistically. Although Krudek, he's been focusing heavily on clay, but I think that's more of a choice than a necessity.
right.
But still, of course, Schwartzman is a big favorite there, and then yeah,
Even if
it
he's a
would
bit
be
injured.
crazy to see Krudek win. Yeah.
Yeah. Go fan locally.
Yeah, locally, I am so in awe of how he experienced some huge heartbreak a week ago because he was in a challenger final in Numea. He had a match point, and he basically, like, after the point, he thought he won it. It turned out that the call was different,
Wow.
and then he lost that match.
Oh my god.
He only won 2 games after that, I believe. There was also like a 4-hour rain delay in the meantime. Just absolutely terrible. I thought it was gonna break him, honestly. And
Yeah.
then he comes to the qualifying, and does this. But the game is not really imposing enough to succeed at this level, I believe.
Okay.
So go for him.
Interesting though. Right, last few. Varia Zverev.
I checked it today, and Varias has never beaten a top 200 player on hard. Even if Zverev is pretty vulnerable right now, I don't really see it now.
Yeah, fair enough. Vukic, but Holt, of course, both qualifiers.
I think Vukic has the much higher upside, but that's the case with Brandon Holt in most of his matches, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes pretty hard to tell how Brandon Holt wins his matches.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, he does. He's definitely a great competitor. He absorbs space pretty well, which is a skill that would help against Alexander Vukic. So, yeah, I don't think it's super clear. I do believe that Vukic is the favorite, though.
Okay. And last one, Struff and Paul.
Are we going for it or not?
I'm going for it. I'm saying Struff.
You're going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have no choice then. I mean, I'm gonna go Struff as well then, but I don't know. There's just something about Tommy Paul, as well, that maybe he's not gonna be like in the top 5 ever or something like that, but he's just he seems destined to stay at the top for a long time, and he's
Yeah.
just such a good competitor that he's not the easiest player to upset. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. Fair enough. But I'm going to give it to Struff just based on an amazing qualifying, and I love Struff, always have. So I'm sticking with it, Damien. Right, Damien, I'm going to let you get to your bed. Thank you very much for joining us. That was really, really good. I'll try and get this out as soon as possible, of course. Please follow Damien on Twitter at Damian Kust, and obviously all the rest. You can see all the details back there for On the Line. Like and subscribe on YouTube. This has been Australian Open Men's Qualifying with Damien. Thank you very much, Damien.
Thank you.
And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.